I am Kusima Miriam, and I welcome all of you to today's talk show. I work with Footprints to Freedom, and the talk show is going to be talking about the 16 days of activism, and our focus is on gender-based violence and human trafficking. With me, I have my colleagues, the panelists. I have Julian, I have Felista, and I have Esther. But I want them to introduce themselves more because I'm just taking their names. So, Julian, you're welcome.
Thank you, Miriam. My name is Julian Ongodia, and I work with the Salvation Army. I'm happy to be on this talk show.
You're welcome, Julian.
Thank you. My name is Felista Nyandoy. I work with Footprint, and it's a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you so much. My name is Tessie. I work with Footprinttofreedom, and I'm also happy to be part of this talk show.
You're very welcome. So let's dig into the talk show. So we are talking about the 16 days of activism, where we are looking at what is the 16 days of activism. So it was something that started way back in 1991 by women activists who saw that there is a need to break the silence when it comes to violating women and girls. So they came together and made a campaign to eradicate any forms of violence against the women and girls. But before we continue with our talk show, I would like to ask a question. What is Footprints to Freedom?
Miriam, thank you for that question. Footprint to Freedom is a survival-led organization that works to break the cycle of human trafficking through interlinked approaches. We have prevention, we do reintegration, we do advocacy, we do empowerment, and also partnership. And that is why we have a visitor, or our pattern, in crime, in fighting human trafficking. We have Mrs. Ongodia Julian.
So I welcome the Salvation Army, our partners who have always been with us in this struggle to break the silence of human trafficking. Yes, you're welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Miriam. I earlier said, I work with the Salvation Army. We are a faith-based organization with the mission to save souls, grow saints, but also serve the suffering humanity. So in the aspect of serving the suffering humanity, we have community projects. Under the community projects, we have Salvation Army implements the anti-human trafficking project. In that, we respond to human trafficking through prevention. In prevention, that's where we have raising awareness. We have a component of supporting victim. There is a component of victim work there. Yes. Thank you, Miriam.
It's such a pleasure to have Salvation Army on board, and it has always been a pleasure working with Salvation Army because in the fight of ending human trafficking, you cannot fight alone. And that's why when we look at the 16 days of activism, we are seeing the theme is to unite, to prevent all forms of violence against women and girls. And the whole essence of uniting is not standing as Footprint alone, but standing as Footprint, Salvation Army, and all the other anti-human trafficking agencies, together with the church and the community, because fighting this heinous crime starts with us, and it continues to every other person there. This chain can only be broken if you stand up to see that you have come together to break that chain and not alone. So thank you very much, Julian, for honoring our invitation. It's such a pleasure to have you here. So looking at gender-based violence, what do you think it is? Because we are just hearing gender-based violence, gender-based violence. What is gender-based violence?
Okay, first of all, gender-based violence is an act that normally results into sexual abuse, that results into psychological torture, and all these heinous acts are targeted. It is the women and the girls that are most vulnerable, and they are the ones that are most affected. And this is because of the culture and the norm, of society that brings about all that. You find that the components of gender-based violence include, say, marital rape. We look at aspects of FGM, or female genital mutilation. Yes, yeah. We see aspects of dowry-related violence. Yeah. So all these, when you look at them, at the end of the day, they are zeroing down to women and men, and girls. Yes.
When we look at gender-based violence, we realize that it is only women. The fight is only on women. You want to say, Felista, there are no men who are violated?
Of course they are there, because with gender-based violence, it is not only on women or girls. Remember, this is something that is more of discrimination on gender. So it can happen to a man, it can still happen to a boy, and then at the same time it can go back to the women. Though with the statistics, women are more. Yeah, it is a third.
So you want to say that not only men are the perpetrators, but also the women.
Mm-hmm.
So does it bring us to gender inequality?
Yes. First of all, maybe we just need to first understand what gender inequality is. Gender inequality is a social phenomenon where people are affected, people of a certain gender are affected in a negative way, and it brings about the inequality thereof. Now, those categories of people are the ones now who normally are affected when it comes to violence, especially the gender-based violence. Once we understand what gender-based violence is, then it is easy for us to understand the aspect of gender inequality.
The gender-based violence and human trafficking. What is that connection between them?
Okay, thank you. Maybe before we get to know the connection, we need to understand what human trafficking is.
Thank you very much.
Human trafficking, we can define it in 3 elements: the act, the means, and the purpose. The act includes the recruitment, the transportation, the transfer, the harboring, and the receipt. In this particular case, the receipt of women and girls by means of threat, by means of coercion. It can also include abduction. It also includes abuse of power. The person who is trafficking these individuals and abuse their power to traffic them, but with the sole purpose of exploiting them. Now, exploitation is in various forms. We have sexual exploitation. We also have labor exploitation, to mention but a few. So how is gender-based violence and human trafficking related? We will look at maybe the similarities
between the violence, the gender-based violence and human trafficking.
Yes, they have similarities. They also have a little bit of differences. One of the common similarity is most of them use sexual violence as a tool to torture, I would say, for lack of a better word, to torture their victim. The other similarity is in both scenarios, they dehumanize the victims. They make them objects, of their businesses, because in the end, for human trafficking, it's a business, and then also there's the aspect of, there's a lot of subordination, like the women in this case must be subjects, to those that are torturing them.
So it brings us to gender inequality. We see that gender inequality is a social phenomenon where people are discriminated according to their sex and gender itself. Yes, back to you, Julian. You were still telling us about human trafficking and gender-based violence.
Yes, thank you very much. Human trafficking and gender-based violence, they have some similarities, but also differences. I'll just highlight maybe one or two differences. While gender-based violence, later we shall talk of the forms of gender-based violence,
yes.
But while that act is done, we see men are the ones who are more into, the perpetrators of gender-based violence are men. While in human trafficking, statistics have shown that a significant number of perpetrators or trafficking brokers are women.
Wow.
Yes.
So it keeps inter-switching between the gender-based violence and human trafficking. This side it is more of women and the other side is more of men.
Yes. Okay. And we also see that some of the women, especially in the trafficking sector, some of the women have not suffered violence. So that's why it's easy for them to use violence as a tool to do traffic, yes, to do their business. Yeah, basically that. Those are the major differences.
So it brings us to human trafficking itself. When we look at, we've seen the similarities between gender-based violence and human trafficking and the differences as well. It brings us back to human trafficking. What are the forms of human trafficking?
Miriam, thank you very much. When it comes to the forms of human trafficking, we have sex exploitation. We have seen women being deceived. You're going to maybe to a different country to work as a manager. When you reach there, you're exploited sexually. We have also child labor. We have organ trafficking. We have seen people being transported to different countries, different villages, or different areas, and then their organs are being removed. You go there, then your liver is taken away. Yes. So those are some of the forms of human trafficking that are very common.
Yes, thank you very much, Felista. With our theme of uniting to prevent these forms of violence against women and girls, we noticed that very many organizations are doing more of education and awareness programs, and their focus is to prevent these crimes. So how is this whole education a powerful tool?
Well, thank you so much, Miriam. As you talked about education and awareness, first of all, these awareness programs and education, they help in spreading information about the different forms of gender-based violence. For example, we might be having domestic violence, we can have sexual assault, there is harassment. So all these educating and awareness campaigns, so individuals are able to know the impact of these various forms. But the other thing I can talk about, education and awareness campaigns, they help in encouraging community intervention. So with community intervention, I mean that community members or individuals, they can easily take action once they witness these forms of gender-based violence. It's easy for them to take action when they have, when they are educated about it.
Yeah.
They can easily know, yes, this is something of gender-based violence, right? So the other thing I can talk about is education and awareness campaigns. They help in advocacy and policy changes. For example, these organizations, like for example Footprint,
Yes.
which is also doing awareness programs, it's easy for us as Footprint to move various levels. For example, from the local community levels to national up to the international platforms. So to add on that, these education and awareness campaigns, they can also help in empowering the potential victims. Like for example, this increased awareness can help in providing the available resources, support services to these people who fall victims of gender-based violence. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Esther. Speaking about, we are looking at victims. We notice that gender-based violence and human trafficking have victims and survivors. As Footprinttofreedom, a survivor-led organization and Salvation Army that deals directly with survivors and victims, what do you think survivors need to thrive?
Thank you very much, Miriam. I would say it in line with what Footprint does for survivors,
Yes.
since it is a survivor-led organization. The first thing is the mental and psychological health. Yes. So, because remember, these people come from where they are being trafficked from, and their mental insanity is not well at all. They are being threatened psychologically. So the first step is to have that the mental health, yes, for them. That is what I would say about helping out survivors, or the support that Footprint gives to survivors as a survivor-led organization. Footprinttofreedom also provides vocational training for survivors. For example, we do financial literacy, we do tailoring, we do IT, and we also help them. We help them in job placements through partnerships with the people that we partner with.
Okay.
Yes. So this really at least pulls them from down to. We help them raise on their feet.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, to add on what she has said, we not only do job replacements, we not only do job placements for them, but also we train them to be leaders. Like, we really give them that knowledge so they can be good advocates of these evil acts that are happening today. Thank you.
It's so good that organizations are coming together to amplify the voices of survivors and victims out there, because training someone to be a leader and an advocate has never been easy. But thanks to the strong women I'm seated with here, who are working tirelessly just to see that victims and survivors of human trafficking have amplified voices, and you're working tirelessly to see that the chain of human trafficking and gender-based violence breaks and puts an end to all forms of violence. I want to thank you very much. It was such a pleasure having you. It was a very interactive conversation, and we really want to appreciate our listeners out there. Please take note that we stand with each and every victim and survivor out there. We don't only focus on human trafficking, but also consider the victims and survivors of gender-based violence, because both crimes move together. We want to tell you that you can always find us on our Facebook pages, Instagram pages, LinkedIn with Footprint to Freedom. You just search for Footprint to Freedom and you will go straight to all our pages. Yes, and our partner is also going to talk about their pages. How can we get to you?
Yeah, thank you so much. You can also find us on YouTube, Anti-Human Trafficking Project Uganda. We are also on the Twitter handle. We are also on Instagram, as well as Facebook.
It was such a pleasure having everyone on board, and this is the Footprint Talk Show. Please don't forget to follow us on every page. Where you get Footprint to Freedom, just get a thumbs up. When you get Salvation Army, endeavor to put a thumbs up. Thank you very much once again.